What you're going to hear about today is nothing short of a miracle. It's dramatically new, made possible only through years of research, inventions, and innovations.
ステレオが部屋を出た。ウォークマン。
Let's just have some fun today. Now, we'll take that and go right up to the canvas. Just sort of let this happen.
So, before we begin tonight, we have a lovely talk by our guest, Martyn over there, just to the right of us. I won't do the full intro. John's going to do a bit of a better job of that in a second. But what I would like to do first, before we get started, is just thank our supporters. So we've got MPB, who is the world's largest online platform to buy, sell, and trade. I sound like a salesman, I know.
I believe, actually, Dominic, we've got someone from MPB here tonight.
Oh my God, do we?
Becky,
wow.
come on up.
Please come up.
Sure. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm head of product at MPB. As Dominic said, we're the largest online platform to buy, sell, and trade digital photography equipment. We are in Brooklyn, Berlin, but we're born and raised in Brighton. So really excited to be here supporting Product Unleashed and Silicon Brighton and all the fantastic work these guys are doing. So thank you.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We are also a big thanks to Silicon Brighton as well, who are also a Brighton-based collaborative knowledge sharing and networking platform. Without them, this event would not happen. So thank you very much.
Literally couldn't do without those guys.
And of course, the student rooms as well. Thanks so much for allowing us to be here. Again, the student room is the largest, best loved, and most useful student community, and we love them. And thanks for having us. Yeah. So, without further ado, John.
Next slide, please, Maestro. So we've got Martyn in the house. Martyn is a design legend. He has worked for many well-known brands. Don't frown. Soak it up. He's worked for many well-known brands, including Penguin, BBC, Microsoft, I think, and most recently was Chief Design Officer at Zoopla. Is that right? Yeah.
Close enough.
Close enough. All right, cool. So, but he's given all that up to start something new, work for a new startup called Upzello, and he's going to take us through his journey so far in the world of product discovery. So yeah, really looking forward to getting Martyn on. And yeah, without further ado, I think we're ready for the talk.
Right, we're going to get him on.
Perfect.
Okay,
let's do it.
A big round of applause.
Woo!
Thank you very much. I think, before we get going, I'm in awe of people like Don and John for what they do for the community. I think people that put on events like this, particularly free events, I really appreciate you. You're the lifeblood of this community. So just please, a round of applause for them as well.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this presentation, this is not a usual kind of format of a presentation. There's no grand theory in this. I'm not going to present you with some kind of high-level hypothesis and then try and back that up. So spoiler alert, at the end of this, there's no great conclusion to it. What I wanted to do instead is I wanted to take you through my story of the experiences and the things that I've learned, some of the things that went well, some of the things that did not go so well, and then hopefully you can learn from them, you can come and try them out, you can just enjoy the free pizza. It's entirely up to you. And at the end, you can ask me anything at all, and I really mean that. Just throw any questions you want at me. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I'm certainly happy to talk about product and design till the wee hours of the day. So a little bit of context. I just wanted to put this there, not as a CV, but to explain where I'm coming from and where my experiences have led to. So first part of my career was in agencies and working for all kinds of different brands along the way, either in big groups or boutiques or whatever. And then went product side, initially at RSA, then Virgin, and then Zoopla. you know, what's kind of important here is that they're all very established brands. Even back here when people were kind of at the start of developing user experiences and digital products, they were in organizations that still already understood their market. They understood their customers. They had already found their niches within their respective verticals. They all had established names. They all had established tech. They had tech stacks. Some of them had more than one, you know, lots of legacy tech along the way. But probably most importantly, they'd all achieved product market fit in some way, shape or form. And they all had a deep understanding of customers and data. So towards the end of 2020, I was approached with an offer. It was an offer unlike anything that I'd had before. A former colleague and friend had sold his startup, starting something new, and wanted me to lead product and design. So a totally blank slate this time. So no existing brand, no nothing. As my good friend Nat likes to say, we were absolutely at the frontier with nothing in front of us. And, you know, I'm knocking on a bit, so I think offers like this aren't going to come around very often. So, you know, as they said, I decided to leave the team that I built at Zoopla and my head of product design role. Back one, there we go. So if you haven't seen it up close, head of product design role is not typically very, very hands-on. This was what my weeks look like. You know, in that kind of situation, when you're scaling out teams of a couple of thousand or whatever, you're not involved in the micro UI and product design decisions. You know, typically my role is effectively designing the team that designs those things. So the group of product designers and product managers, that was my product and that was my research area. So I went kind of from this to zero, which is a good way to kind of get a good case of the fear. Pretty steep learning curve, so that can only be a good thing, right? The other thing I'll say before I get going is that I'm not going to talk in a lot of detail about the actual product itself. There's a few reasons for that. Partly because it's, you know, we're just moving into private beta and there's nothing much out in the world yet. Partly because, you know, I don't want to make this some sort of gross sales pitch to you, because that wouldn't be very nice. But mostly really because I think that these learnings and the things that we did and the methods that we used, I think they're applicable across the board. I don't think that they were anything special to the vertical that we were in. I don't think there's anything in there that's particular to the nature of our product. I think the value of discovery and the emphasis on that kind of work within a product cycle is equal regardless of where you are in the world. So that's the setup. Let's get on with the story. So step one is really just getting us past the blank piece of paper. So we had an idea, like a kernel of an idea, probably more of a observation and a frustration more than anything else. But it needed to be fleshed out, and it needed to have some stress testing, and it needed to be articulated in some way, shape, or form, so that we could understand and see, you know, if it was the right thing to be standing up. So first thing we did is we gathered up a very small group of trusted friends and people that we'd hoped to work with in the future. We got together in we rented out a hotel conference room to spend the day in. And I want to be clear as well, you know, this is not a glamorous startup scene in like a nice venue like this with, you know, exposed ceilings and stuff. This was just a sweaty hotel room with no windows, with that kind of heavy, sad stench of insurance brokers about it. But it's exciting because we had a space and we had people in it, and it felt like something coming together. And that's where we started to kick things off and bring it all together. So first thing we did was a group empathy mapping session. And if you haven't done one of these, it's a very, very simple kind of 3-box exercise. On one side is the customer, representations of what they need, what they're trying to achieve, and things that piss them off, etc. other side is represented by the product or the service or the business, whatever it is, and the things that they do. And so really, by starting in this position, we start from a position of making sure that the thing that we want to do isn't just a case of building cool tech or just throwing stuff together that we want to make because we're excited about it. It's ensuring that what we're doing is actually solving some kind of problem in some way, shape, or form. And really what that kind of brings us to is a kind of an ability to line these things up and measure against one another. And you can see, like right from the off, we could see points that we weren't servicing, things that we weren't quite achieving, things that lined up nicely, and so on and so forth. So it's a good exercise for kind of starting to frame the product around a thing that it achieves and enables people to achieve, rather than just something we want to build. So side note, we spent the first part of our day working on establishing the product. Second part of the day we spent on actually the team itself. Now I understand here that this is a product event and we're supposed to be talking about product discovery, but I wanted to mention this because we were not only building a product, we were actually building a business, a team, a group of people. And I think there's value in a lot of product discovery methods being applied to other areas and things. So what we did here is I led the team through a pre-mortem exercise. I was introduced to pre-mortems by Pete Winchester, who runs the design team down here in Brighton in Magex. And essentially what you do is you frame the worst case scenario in the future. So for us, it's Q4 of this year and everything's gone to hell. And that's a tough pitch for a group of people you just brought together to get excited. But what it does then is it allows you to then move that conversation into an exercise whereby you can detail, well, what went wrong? Like what actually has gone wrong in this worst case scenario? And then you move on to, well, what are we going to do to stop that from happening? And by doing it this way, it's a really, really great way to surface risks, to surface complexities, most importantly for us to surface fears and to kind of get out on the table the things that we were nervous about going into the project. It was, for me, I think it was a fantastic exercise, not strictly product discovery, but still good nonetheless. Anyway, back to the story. So we had the empathy mapping. I took all of the outputs from that. I pulled it together into a very simple, opportunity canvas. And this really just became our shorthand. This became the way that we would articulate the product. This became our kind of agreement, if you will, for what we were building. So we were all using the same language. We were all understanding where the things are that we felt were unique about the product and who we were aiming it at, most importantly. So large group of people all distilled down into a kind of relatively simple structure. It's a good step for us. So now that we had got some shape to the idea, and once we sort of agreed on where this idea would start, it was time for us, we felt, to start talking to potential customers. We wanted to ultimately see if the things that we had observed and we had felt and we had experienced were true in other areas. We wanted to look inside other organizations, understand how they operate, ultimately just kind of looking for signals of product market fit. So our discovery here was really just testing the assumptions and the experiences that we had had to date and whether or not that was kind of reflected in reality. And so anyone who's been within any kind of distance, socially safe distance of me this year has heard me just banging on about product market fit. According to an article by Forbes in 2019, 72% of all new products fail, which means, we had approximately like a 1 in 7 chance of this working. And that's why I've been so strict on the product discovery phase. Because for me as a product lead, if we don't achieve product market fit, we're going to fail, right? And that's on me. That sits on my shoulders. If we solve the wrong problem, or if we don't solve a problem at all, this game's over, and that's on me because I think we all know that no smart tech and no cunning marketing can get you out of that problem. If you have a product that nobody can use or that they want, you know, nothing's going to help. So I'm going to use every tool that's available to me to ensure that we have a solid discovery phase. And it really comes down to nothing more than that. It's around understanding whether or not the thing that you're making is the right thing before you figure out if it's, you know, made right. So if anyone here is ever challenged on the need for any discovery work, I strongly recommend you get hold of articles like that and stats like that and just wield them like a weapon. So where did that get to us? That got us to a point where we had an interview script. So we started to talk to people. We gathered up all the things that we saw and that we heard, started to find themes for them. We then attempted to then kind of move those into job statements. And at this stage, we opted for job statements over user statements because we felt there was a wider scope for different possibilities of solutions within those. And then again, onto that kind of capturing it even further to distill it down to like profiles of customers, sort of like personas, but more orientated around the jobs themselves. And that was a kind of good chunk of work. And that got us here. A big red nothing. We looked really hard at this, and the problem that we were solving, it just simply didn't exist in the same degree in those other organizations that we'd managed to speak to. It was not that big of a problem. We found people who recognized, you know, the stuff that we were talking about at the time. And yeah, they said, yeah, you know, it can be laborious, but it really wasn't at any kind of volume that was a concern to them. And they certainly were not going to pay for a product to solve this thing. So that was hard to hear. Yeah. And also hard to understand as well, because we had started to see other products emerging in this space at the time, and yet there just wasn't signals for us that this was something chunky to get into. So, you know, nonetheless, from this work, it was clear that something needed to change. So we decided to look back at the product structure. We felt, rightly or wrongly, that there was a good idea in there still, but clearly something needed to be different. So myself and the founder, we got into a room, spent the day working on it. We were heavily under the influence of Sharpies and Post-it notes and the fumes from that. And we started openly just asking, well, what if we just took all of this away? What if that all was different? And what if that wasn't true? And you know, rightly or wrongly, just kind of pushing our way through it. And we could see in the research that the problem really wasn't big enough when we spoke to people in the UK. In the US, slightly different. There was a lot more kind of demand for it. So after kind of hammering away at it for quite some time, the idea that we came up with was to move to a model where we had a product suite. So, you know, multiple kind of smaller products under an umbrella, like a Zendesk kind of model, or Intercom or things like that. We felt that would allow us to solve similar related problems that had come up and then still create the space for our original product idea to grow into, effectively letting the market come to us. We didn't spend a lot of time digging back through the insights. Instead, we tried to model our product around the market that we wanted to see, ultimately. So we knew that the first round of concept testing was very valuable. We were happy to go back around that loop and test again. We were happy to follow a kind of pretty similar process on that. This time out, we got a bit excited and we built clickable prototypes of the product and the flow to show people kind of what it would look like. We made landing pages to describe it. And this time out, we'd pretty much exhausted our friends and our network at this point. So we went to people for research and said to them, like, here's specifically who we want to speak to. So our audience had absolutely no obligation to be polite. Our interviews were structured around getting the absolute maximum that we could out of the individuals that we were speaking to. We covered the tech that they used, the kind of organizations they sat in, the terminology that they were using. And because we had assets that we could put in front of them on screen shares, we could ask them their kind of view on, we could sort of ask around their perceived value of it. Would this change their work? Who did they think it was aimed at? Why would someone make this product? How much do you think it would cost? Any of that kind of stuff. And because we went to work with people for research to kind of find us these people, they got us folks from multiple sectors in multiple countries. It was really the best kind of insight we could have hoped for. At the same time, in the background to all our nice discovery work, the whole organization was kind of picking up momentum at this point. So our engineers that we were working with had started to try and prove out the tech, and they were building out prototypes. We'd started developing ideas for where the brand would go and how we would approach the marketing. Also, at this time, we started the first kind of stages of building the team. So we were hiring engineers, and right there was a red flag because, and this was new to me, coming to a small organization. We had no brand, we had no product, we had no place in any kind of market. Don't even have a website at this stage. So we're pretty much pitching to people to join. And in doing so, we're having to describe the product. And what we noticed was it was taking us a good 5-10 minutes to explain what this product was to people. So we couldn't do it succinctly. And if we could do it, we would certainly not doing it consistently. And how I would say it and how the founder would say it and others would say it would all be slightly different. So unnerving kind of experience in that. And then we started to work with a content designer as well. And the content designer was initially brought in to help us kind of work on some of our positioning and some of our proposition statement as we started to form material to talk to investors. And that really opened our eyes because we could not, again, succinctly articulate what the product was, let alone the value of it. So at this stage, we really knew something wasn't right. We felt still that there was good product ideas, but being too hard to explain was problematic, right? So then we went into the concept testing, and people just didn't get it. They just simply didn't understand the thing that we were trying to tell them. I mean, it landed just about, and we kind of got some nods and some, yeah, I get it kind of thing. But it was not the positive response that we were hoping for. And what was really telling was that when we went out to people for research to find participants, it took them an inordinately long amount of time to find them, right? Which in itself is a learning. There was a very low response rate. We had to up the amount that we were paying people. So that in itself was important and notable. So this was a really tough stage for us. This was a point when you start to think, what are we doing here? Like, is this ever going to work? We're trying to balance like not moving slowly and moving fast and learning with doing the right steps and making sure that we've got something that we believe in. And now, just to remind you, don't forget at this stage, we've been running for 3 or 4 months now, and no product, no revenue streams, pure loss, pure outgoings, fear level 11. Now at this stage, right? We had a lot of momentum, a lot of enthusiasm, but success felt like a pretty long way off. And as I said, I'm no longer in a big organization, so I can't fall back on a strategy team. There's no research department for me to go and talk nicely to. There's no additional revenue stream for us to look at. As a product design lead, this is kind of sitting on me. So a new approach is very much needed. So at this point, as I said, we'd worked with a content designer on our proposition, and really that just changed everything. That for us moved everything forward. And we decided that we would need a far more focused, a brutally focused approach, in fact, to get back to the very core of the product, to get to a succinct definition of the product and its value. because clearly in an attempt to move quickly and keep our momentum, we just drifted away from the things that we'd seen in the canvas. We had not sunk deep into the research enough, I don't think. So now the stage was that we just wanted to strip everything back to basics, simpler, smaller, faster, quicker to market, and we decided to double down and focus in on that proposition. So here's how I set it up. Simple structure, proposition. You probably would have seen these kinds of things before. So product name, helps, primary audience, verb, do a thing, and verb, do a thing again, with a thing, object, so they can, verb, adverb, some hyperbole. So example of that would be Spotify helps music lovers find and save music so they can listen endlessly. Now, it's a beautiful proposition. It's a beautiful product, really, isn't it? So this is where we spent almost, a good, I don't want to say a whole day because it felt like forever, but it was like a good portion of our day going at this proposition statement. And we are not writers. The wordy, righty stuff is not the thing that comes easily to us. So this was painful work, but it felt really good, to be honest, to be cutting so aggressively at this stage and liberating to kind of bring it back to its core. So once we worked through that, we had a proposition that we really believed in, and we took the one element through all of our research and all of the findings and all of the work, the one thing that was true for us, and we decided that's it. That's the thing we're just going to focus in on. Crafted our proposition, shared it with the team, and from that point, everything unlocked, and we moved super fast, and we took an axe to our prototype and chopped that up, changed the name of the company. We did all of that in just 2 weeks' time, because now we had this proposition. Everything kind of led back to that, and everything, was a kind of, that became a lens for us to put everything through. We went back to people for research to do another round of concept testing. They provided us with an awesome selection of participants, despite landing right at the start of the summer holidays. So the outcome was good. We made a breakthrough, and the product concept testing not only showed us that the participants understood the product now, but saw the value in it as well. They even gave us some new feature ideas along the way. We even had one participant asking if they could sign up for it. So this unlocked a lot of great stuff for us. We now had a much more informed view of who our audience was, and we were able to break it down into different layers. So who was using it, who was signing it off, who was going to be viewing it, etc., etc. Thanks to the data and the stuff that we gathered, we were able to see what the market looked like and how it broke into different sectors, where some of the value sat in those markets, who the big players were in it, so we could now see the size of our opportunity. We now have a pretty well-rounded and solid set of product principles, which all relay back to what we saw in the research and is there in our value proposition. And these provide us with a kind of stick to beat each other with when we're working on ideas and product features and so on and so forth. Does it help get to this? Does it help serve that proposition? It really is the thing that kind of has prevented us from building the wrong thing and building it the wrong way. I'll be honest with you, if we hadn't done this work, if we hadn't done it in this order, if we hadn't pushed so hard on that proposition, I might be here telling you about a startup that I worked at for half a year that failed. I probably wouldn't have been invited at all, to be honest with you. So not only did the emphasis on the product work change the product that we made, but it changed the team as well. I think it's fair to say that perhaps any skepticism around research or this kind of approach has long since been blown away. All of our sprints now have tasks that are kind of broken into one of these three labels. So discovery work is still very important to us, whether or not that's product discovery, design discovery, tech discovery, it doesn't matter, it all fits into that. So all the timelines that we're working on, all account for an amount of discovery work, which in itself is kind of a, the unknown that you kind of can't plan for. So, the ideas that we had along the way, they're not gone. We've just stored them all away, and for a later date, we'll bring them back to life and explore them and see if they're worthwhile still and they're still relevant, but all now through the lens of our proposition. Does it serve it? Does it bring us to where we need to be? Does it provide that value to customers? Which roughly brings us up to today. So the next stage for us, of course, is live testing. So by that, I mean setting up a private beta. So now our discovery is shifting from sort of, I guess, declared preferences to observed preferences. As we get real users into the product, we can see how they're operating with the product. We can watch them click around. They can give us kind of direct feedback. So I'm in the process of organizing, weekly calls with the beta participants, with setting up a private Slack channel and chat for them, and so on and so forth, so we can hear real complaints and see real bugs inevitably, and start to build on that discovery work. So yeah, so from zero to product in, I guess, around, I don't know, was it 7-8 months, we now have a very well-defined product strategy. We have a product in beta, an end-to-end product. You can actually click on stuff. It's kind of exciting. We have all the assets coming together for our identity, for our brand, for our marketing plan. There's 8 of us now in the team. So we're a little bigger, which means some of the mechanisms of organizations are starting to form around us. So the support is there, which is a kind of relief for me. So I sleep a bit better now. So it's been a lot. And, if I had to do it again, I'm not sure that I would do very much different. But the things that I've learned along the way is just, I always defer to the core proposition. In pretty much every conversation we have, even today, this got absolutely hammered when we had other product ideas if it's not on the core proposition, it's not going in. Right? This is our intention. This is our aim. This is the thing the value that we're trying to achieve. Everything defers back to that, and relentlessly. Testing assumptions at every single stage, whether or not that's just I've written an idea down versus I've built a prototype versus I've built some tech versus I'm going to launch it in the market. Every single stage, testing assumptions. We're discovering whether or not these things are still true and whether or not the things that we had assumed to be true can be pressure tested. And then thirdly, as I said, I bang on about this endlessly, but we're relentlessly focused on product market fit, because ultimately, to my mind, that's what discovery is for. It's there to inform decisions, to color your conversations, to inform your designs, to help you achieve product market fit, and to stop your venture from becoming one of those that fails along the way. I think I have probably talked for long enough, maybe too long now, so I will just say thank you for having me, and I'm going to pass it over to you to ask any questions.
Okay, we back on the mic. Check. Cool.
Check. Cool.
Thanks, Martyn. That was really, really brilliant.
Thanks.
Should we open it out to the room?
Yeah, I think.
Does
Do
anyone
we have any before we jump to the room? Do we have any questions online? Okay,
That's
cool.
right.
Let's push it to the room. If not, I've got a couple.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions here for Martyn?
Becky?
So I was interested in the two learnings at the end. How does it change if you already have product market fit? Do you still focus on proposition, or do you change your focus to position?
Yeah, good question. Product market fit, I think, is never a given. And even when I've worked in kind of established brands, we are still chasing product market fit like it's being taken away from us, because so much can shift and change from underneath you, regardless of how established you are. Point in case, I worked at Virgin Atlantic. Product market fit, everyone's happy. global pandemic, you don't have product market fit, right? Everything shifts and changes. I mean, even at Zoopla, I mean, they've got a fantastic team, a well-established position, and new people are entering the market constantly. So no, ultimately, I don't think things change, because I think that as a product lead or anyone involved in developing a product, I think you have to be just relentlessly chasing after that to ensure what you have is in some way defensible. And so even to that end, so the exercise that I was going through today with some of the folks in the team was figuring out what our feature set is like compared to other people who are kind of, I guess, closest competitors. But then, okay, what inside that is ultimately ours? Like, what inside that can someone not replicate in some way, shape, or form? If we've got these features, someone else can go and build these features and we're done. So what's the thing inside that product that offers value beyond any of that no one can kind of get to?
Cool, thanks so much. I think, sorry for the online audience, I should have moved the mic over there to capture that question. But
it's a great question.
Yeah, hopefully you'll get the idea from the answer. So,
okay,
I've got a question actually. So obviously you came from working with bigger organizations and big companies and very much more, I guess, from a kind of sort of almost like lead role, managerial role. You spent a lot of your time, as you said, in meetings. What was it like going from that, obviously, to suddenly being almost back to what I guess when you first started, and very much more of a hands-on role with a much smaller kind of outfit?
Did you not see all the poo emojis?
Yeah.
Like there was a whole slide of them earlier.
It was scary, yeah. I mean, I've been very lucky because we have surrounded ourselves by some very, very talented people, and I've had the great fortune of working with a product designer through it who, I couldn't have done it without. But the adjustment was kind of ridiculously hard, and people will often make fun of me for slides. In a large organization, everyone makes slides and you communicate stuff through putting a slide deck together. Yeah. And so I keep doing that, and everyone's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, just have a conversation. And I'm like, no, I've done a presentation about it.
That's a designer thing as well, though.
Yeah, they look great, but I don't know that they're worthwhile. So I'm trying to find that balance between, like, I've seen inside operations that are high performing, and I want to take that with me, versus there's no other departments to talk to, and you don't need a slide deck, and you don't need to kind of pitch to get money and all that. I'm trying to find that balance between the two. But yeah, I think just lucky from having very good people around me to soften the blow.
Okay, brilliant. Any other questions in the room? You got a question online?
Right, Martyn, I've got a question here from Arsan. Did you use NDAs? If so, how tight does the NDA have to be for research and user testing? So others don't copy before you go to market.
That's a few questions. Okay, so did we use NDAs? In the very first round, we were just listening. Like, in the very first instance, we didn't have anything to show anybody. And we just, when people asked us why, I think we just sort of fluffed it, kind of said, we've got some projects, don't worry about it, we want to know about you. So in the first instance, no, because it was just pure exploratory. At the point when we first went to recruit participants, we had a very basic low-level NDA because we debadged everything. Like, all the prototypes were all wireframe. We just put random names and used kind of stock illustrations and stuff. We purposefully just sort of made it anonymous. And then as we kind of went through, the NDAs got more and more robust, and we kind of locked it down a little bit more. And then, in the most recent round, we had our name on it, we had our brand on it. It was very clear what the proposition was and what it did. So yes, we locked those down. What was the third part of the question?
Third part was, I'm getting loads of questions now, so I've just lost it all on the feed. 2 secs. Sorry. The third part of the question was just a comment, actually, just in terms of using NDAs just before anyone else.
Yes, do that.
I've got another question here actually from Colin Hayhurst. Do you have any views on the efficacy of the working backwards framework and steps?
No. I don't know what it is.
I'll ask Colin.
But Colin, please get in touch and tell me what it is, because it sounds super smart.
Yeah, it's what Amazon use for their developing their products.
Yeah, I'm sure Colin will be back quite quickly. I've got one here from Kerry, I think it is. Yeah, Kerry. Post-product launch, what's the right proportion of time split? Post-product launch, what's the right proportion of time split for continual discovery versus delivery?
That's very hard to answer. I mean, I think
She's got a comment actually. They're a not-for-profit and a small team, and they struggle to put the right level of attention on ongoing discovery alongside delivery.
I see. So. Okay. Yeah, there's two ways to answer that. So let me see if I can kind of do it justice. So I think in terms of an amount of time or a proportion of time, I mean, that wholly depends on the nature of the discovery. I mean, if you've got live users in the product, you know, discovery can be spending a day looking at the data and figuring out what people are doing and session recordings and so on and so forth. If you're in a product and you're developing a new feature or new functionality or whatever it is, I mean, you can apportion sprints upon sprint depending on what you need to do. I think the real underlying question there is, how do I get people to agree to do discovery, right? Because I think that sounds like the subtext there. And if I would go back to the big scary facts and kind of explain why you're doing discovery. Ultimately, if you can kind of put it in terms that people will understand in an organization, if you can talk about reduction of overhead, if you can talk about, you know, reducing debt, if you can talk about de-risking investments, those kinds of terms that get people moving, then that's how you increase the proportion of discovery work. You know, you kind of express the inherent value of it to the business. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks. Yeah. We've just done a quick Google on working backwards.
Oh, this is Colin's question.
This is Colin's question. He hasn't
Colin has lit up the room. Come on.
We've got it here. So I've got working backwards documents are, well, it says 6-page narrative memos, but they start with a press release meant to capture the idea as customers might see.
Right.
And
Colin, why didn't you just say that? Yeah. I mean, we did not go to that same degree, but essentially by building out those landing pages, it got us to ultimately the same position. It got us to that kind of, that notion of there's a thing, what do we want to say about it? So as I understand that exercise, Colin, forgive me if I've got this wrong, but you could kind of write a press release explaining what the product would be like, and you do that right at the start. So it's effectively like a nicer version of the pre-mortem exercise, right? Where in my one, it was all doom and gloom and everything's gone wrong. And in Colin's version, it's much more like, hey, we've launched this thing and everything's great. What are the steps that we do to get there? So, I mean, you know, I guess I'm not as bright as Colin to kind of frame it in those terms, but ultimately it's expressing where you want to be and where you don't want to be and finding the steps to that. So I absolutely endorse that as an approach. We didn't do it that methodically.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's it from online for the time being.
Hello. I'm going to ask the age-old question, I guess. When you've got 1,000 ideas, and all of them seem great, how do you decide what to go after?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. I think that's the endless kind of game for anyone in product. I'm a big fan of the rice model. I don't know if you've sort of seen that and know your way around that model, but it's reach, impact, confidence, and effort, and it kind of gives you a bit more flavor than some of the other kind of prioritization methods, and particularly confidence. The C in rice, I just think is so flipping powerful, you know. And as a scoring system of like, we'll give this a 0 score if you don't have any evidence to suggest this is a good idea, or we'll give it a score of 1 if your competitors are doing it and that's it. We'll give it a score of 2 if you've built a prototype and done some testing, 3 if you've done it, like blah 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 blah. Like that always trumps everything else, I think. For us at this stage, it's a little bit different because we have inexplicably set ourselves a launch date, and we're working to that, and we have an amount of capacity that we can achieve, and if we can't get it in, then it's not going in, and it's as simple as that. So that, you know, agile professionals will be horrified by that kind of approach, but I like those hard lines and kind of walls, and sometimes I do think that the agile needs that a little bit more, because it makes you, it just provides another way to be strict on it. And then for us, when we're thinking about what's kind of coming up straight after launch, it's what is going to serve that proposition the most effectively, and what's going to give us a defensible advantage in the market. It's not a very clear answer because it's just fucking hard, right? It just is hard, and the more methods that you can throw at it, the better, I would say.
Okay, I've got another one. Oh, there's one at the back there. Let's do. No, go on. Let's do the in. You know, John,
need a mic.
As a product manager or owner, your job is to ask the difficult questions, and there are quite a lot of poo emojis throughout the presentation. How do you, obviously in asking those difficult questions, it can be very challenging throughout the project to, look at what is positive in what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
How do you inject that positivity in the team whilst you're, because, again, asking difficult questions, it's difficult to answer sometimes.
How do you make a shit sandwich?
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard. I'm not going to lie. There's been a few moments where I've come off a research call and just had to go outside and have a drink. Because then you come back and you're like, great, good learnings, everyone. Let's keep going. Where, after I've had a little cry. So what, do you know what? I very much believe in the journey more than the end. That's, for me, I know that sounds a bit kind of floaty, but I kind of enjoy all of the steps regardless of whether or not they're up or down. And I think if you can get people kind of along that journey and bring people along, and you can kind of infect them with some kind of belief, then I think that's fine. Little tip that I do is I always make it really clear before we go into any kind of research that it's gonna be hard. I will always say that, like when we go in, I said, I'm not hoping for good things. I'm hoping to find the tough stuff in here, because if I get, you pay 8 people for an hour of their time, and you sit there and you do all that work, and everyone just says it's great. You've learned fuck all, really, to be honest with you. That's not where the value is. So I make sure everyone understands that you're going to hear difficult things in these research things, and that's good, right? And that gives us things that are powerful. And even when it was, tough, and we came back and said, this isn't working, and that's not working, and so on and so forth, it was providing us momentum at every stage. So every time it was like, okay, so now we know that we can do this from it, and we've avoided spending time on something that wasn't going to work. So I think just sort of, but by highlighting the fact that we're avoiding perils, and then making it clear to people that that you're here to hear the gritty stuff.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, I've got a quick one.
Go ahead, mate.
So obviously,
thank you very much.
For a lot of people, they might work for a big brand or a big organization and almost dream of doing what you're doing, but they kind of, I guess, are reluctant to because of the security and everything that comes alongside perhaps having that kind of role or whatever it is that they do.
It's a really bad idea.
Yeah, so that was the question really, is like, so, from your experience so far in obviously moving away from that into something like this, which is very different, like you said, was nothing when you first started. Are you glad that you've done that?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
You are? Okay.
Was that the question?
Yeah. Just from your experience so far of moving away from that, would you go back, or are you quite happy now?
No, I'm not going back. No, I hope not, but maybe I feel like I've got a startup bug now. I mean, I did 10 years or so in agencies, doing all the things that agencies do that you should probably not talk about, and then 10 years in product side. And then when this offer came along, it was just, I knew that I just was not going to be the person in the room who knew the most at all, and that it was going to be a super steep learning curve, and it has been, and that's great because that makes me feel like I'm not just staring down the barrel of those calendar views. That's not made up. That was just a standard week for me, and that's what it was like, and that's how I kind of operated for 10 years. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm in it for the journey, and I'm hooked on it so far.
Great, that's really good. And I think just to add to that, I think that's really important, and that's another one of the reasons why we do this sort of thing is that I think sometimes in the industry or you know, when you're in it and in the thick of it, there's almost like an expectation or a fear that you need to know everything, and there's so like different methodologies and everything. It's like, why don't you know it like that? Just there, that
or Collins.
Yeah, Collins. Yeah. It's almost like, oh God, and should I feel bad that I don't know it? Because there are just so many things, and actually, yeah, you don't need to know it all. It's all about just working through things until you get the right answers.
So I can tell you, I've worked in some very high-performing organizations with some very smart people doing incredible things, and they don't know what they're doing. So I'm fine.
They're just better at black. We're all in it together.
Sure. Yeah, they've just got nicer offices. It's fine.
Can I just ask, with the kind of proposition thing, you know, that really seemed like there was a definite shift in poo emojis to like happy emojis at that point. Like, how liberating was it to do that and work with that content designer? And then also, like, did you kind of kick yourself a little bit that you hadn't done it before?
Yeah, to the first part of your question, very liberating. It felt like we had something that we really believed in, and the fact that we could just say it in a sentence, and that it was the sort of singular truth through all of this other stuff felt great for me. And the fact that we moved so quickly was really exciting, because suddenly all this stuff came to fruition, and the tech started to appear in a browser, and everything started to move, and it was like, shit, we've got a product suddenly. And would I have done it sooner? I mean, the content designer will tell me, of course I should have done it sooner, and I should have done it before I even took the job. But I don't know. I mean, I think that it was necessary at that time, because we had done so many sort of twists and turns that were not as well founded in the core value. So at that time, it was sort of like the remedy to it. So I think I probably would have just done it again at that point. And I think if we ever get to a point with the product where it's evolved and moved, and I notice people describing it in different ways, or I notice people taking a long time to describe it, it's more than likely that I'll come back to that as a concept and see if we can kind of trot that one out again.
We got any more questions in the room?
Any
more online?
Everyone's
We're done.
Gone.
Okay, I guess that leaves us to just thank Martyn again. If we could just get another little round of applause for Martyn. Thanks so much. It's been really good having you here.
Forgot that slide.
We're doing another round of Q&As.
Oh, here we go.
Round 2. Everyone grab a drink. So yeah, it's just left for us to say thanks to our speaker. Obviously, thanks to our supporters, MPB, Silicon Brighton, the student room. Thanks to you, you crazy fools, for coming along. Everyone in person, it's been great to have people in the room and online as well. Yeah, it's been brilliant, isn't it? And do we have anything about next time, our next event? Dang, we do. Yeah, didn't get a chance to put the Eventbrite up, but it's on the 25th of November, and you can sign up soon, so we'll let you know. And for those of you who want to continue, I think we're going to stay here for a little bit. There's more pizza left. Yeah, I think we're in here till 8. There's a bit more pizza. There's some more beer. And then we are going to be moving to the Prince Albert for anyone who wants to carry on from 8 onwards.
Ask more questions.
Yeah. Cool. More poo emojis.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.